Hey everybody, and welcome back to Dad's Studio. I think I'm just doing another Let's Render video here. The last one seemed to go down pretty well, so I'm just going to crack on. I've actually had loaded in the characters into the scene, preempted that, so that we don't have to take a break halfway through the video to do that. So yeah, I think I'm going to do a conversation video with two characters. So in order to do that, obviously I need somewhere for them to be able to have that conversation. This time I'm going to do an outdoor scene, and I'm actually just going to add props to the scene manually rather than loading a pre-made scene, because I kind of want I don't really necessarily have specific wants and needs at this point. I just want to demonstrate just adding things into a video first. So I'm just going to go through all of my props and figures and just find the items that I want. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening off screen. I'm going to be looking through my content library and then adding those items into the scene as I get them, as I find the ones I want. So I kind of like this one. That looks pretty good. Yeah, my two characters are over there. I'm actually going to hide the characters just to speed things up a little bit in the short term, because I might want to investigate the look. This is going to be more of a head and shoulders kind of affair, so I'm not overly bothered about what's actually happening on the floor, but obviously I need things in the background, I need things in the foreground. So I've got my table there, pretty happy with that, I reckon. So now I can go for a couple of chairs. Let's see what we've got. Just searching through my smart content library again. And I don't really care about specifically what chair it is. It just has to look like it's not completely out of sorts with the set. So I'm going to go with this one, and I'm going to do two of those. Okay, so one for each character. Make sure we've got the move tool selected. I'm going to move one over this side of the table, and this isn't going to be their final resting places, but obviously we need to, in parameters, we need to switch this one out and rotate it to 0 degrees there, like so. So this is where our character is going to be sitting. I kind of want something in the background. I haven't really thought about what that's going to be, so I'm going to just look for some plants or something like that, and just make sure I've got nothing selected. One of the biggest mistakes that people question me about is when they're trying to find something in their smart content folder and they've accidentally got a object selected. That tends to be the problem, because of you can switch it off in your smart content. When you're looking at smart content, there is a checkbox at the bottom of the list that says filter by context, and if you turn that off, it will simply show you all of your items in that category and not filter them based on what item you have selected in the scene. Personally, I would leave that box checked and just deselect what you've got, because it makes life a lot easier, particularly when you're trying to find poses. If you're looking for poses for a specific character and you don't have that checked, you might be loading in poses that aren't actually compatible with that person. And you might end up having to, you're just going to waste a lot of time, essentially. So what I'm looking for is some kind of plant, I suppose. Maybe let's see what we've got here. Some kind of palm tree, maybe. Okay, there is a palm tree in the scene. Where it has gone, oh, it's all the way up there. Okay, that's weird. Don't know why that is there. We should be bringing this down somewhere around here. As I said, it hasn't got to be perfect in terms of its Y position. Oh, it was actually in the correct place. It's just friggin' mahoosive. Alright, let's just bring that back in. Oh no, I stand corrected. It is not. It is not by any stretch of the imagination. Cool. Right, happy with that. Right, so this is going to be in the background of our shot. Let's lower it down a little bit, just so that it's not weirdly encroaching in the shot at the base. That would look very odd indeed. There we go. And I'm thinking maybe some kind of hedge as well. No idea where that's going to appear. Yep, I don't understand why people do this. It's quite frustrating. It just build your props so that they're at 0, 0. it's really not that difficult. I know I'm being silly. I know that it's actually mostly because I'm using props from scenes and things like that. So I'm actually going to put that in front of the tree so that you can't actually see the base of the tree. I might regret that later, we'll find out. Alright, so I'm going to put a pitcher of water onto the table. And there it is, so we're going to bring that up. Zoom right in, let's get in there. Let's focus on the object. And then we can rotate down and we can make sure that it's not hovering above the table as if it's in The Exorcist. There we go, right, that's nicely level with the table, and now we can move it over so that it looks like it's actually being used. Next thing we're after is probably... Now let's have a think. Let's have a think. What else do we need? I suppose we should have some glasses on the table. Maybe some kind of table decoration other than the pitcher of water. This is kind of an outdoor, beachy kind of scene, so I don't want it to be... I don't want it to be like proper cheesy. I might put... Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a bench of some sort in the background by the hedge. So I'm going to rotate that by 180 degrees as well. And then I'm just going to slot this over here so that it looks like it's meant to be there. And then that can be something else, kind of like a background decoration. That works for me. What else do we want in our scene? What else? I'm liking the foliage. The foliage is working for me. Oh, here we go. We've got some mugs. Let's do that. So that's going to come up. What I can do is I can Control C on the picture, and then if I go Control V on the mug, it automatically brings the mug up to the same vertical level, or it copies the position basically. So I can actually put that on there, and then I can just do a little Y rotate so that it's not perfectly central. And then there's two people going to be at the table, so I will just do the same thing again. Control V. And I can slide this one over here. And I'm just going to leave that one where it is. Looking okay so far. What else can we have that's going to look good on this table? We need some kind of light. It doesn't have to be an actual light source, but it has to look good. And let's look, see if we've got a lamp, a table lamp of some description in our selection of props and items. If not, we can just... Okay, so there's a table. There's a tray. There we go. We can pop that underneath the picture, so now it looks like it's meant to be there. Let's just check that that's not hovering above the table, and it is. So we will just drop that down a smidge. And if it sinks into the table ever so slightly, it's not the end of the world. And if you notice that the two mugs are actually also hovering above the table, so we'll just drop them down. It's better to clip through the table by a small amount than it is to... Right, so that's now correct. So if we go, that's 81.53. So if we just go 81.5, that will now sit above the table nicely. The tray's now above, on the table. No, it's not, it's sank into the table. If we change that one to 81.5, there we go. That's better. Now we're looking good. Now we are looking good. And the reason I'm doing it this way, guys, more than anything else, is because I'm trying to illustrate that if you're just building a simple scene where the characters are the main focus, as long as your HDRI is solid, by that I mean good, not actually physically solid, you need minimal stuff in the scene to actually pull it off. So let's just see where we are at the moment. So I've got Laura, put her sitting down. Oh, we need to do Control. Turn that off. I'll give it a minute. It's now going to spend 20 minutes having a think. There we go. So I'm going to just give her a pose, a sitting pose. So we need to go into our poses. I need to remember to turn my filter by context on. And then we're just going to go to filter by function and sitting. And then I'm just going to find a pose that suits the scene. Bear in mind that they're not only sitting down, but they're having a conversation. So there's no point having two people sitting all prim and proper on a chair. They need to actually be in a pose where it looks like they're engaging in some kind of conversation. So let's go with this one. We're going to put Laura in the position that I want her to be in, more or less. Again, the trick here is that her feet are not going to be in the scene, so it doesn't matter if she's perfectly at 0. What's important is that the table level and the chair level are more relevant. So we're just going to up that a little bit. You're not going to be able to see her hand either, so you haven't got to make sure that it's perfect on the actual seat of the chair. What you need to do is just rotate everything so that it looks like it's meant to be there. So I'm actually going to rotate that chair slightly like this. And I'm actually going to rotate Laura slightly as well, so that she's actually looking more or less in the direction of this chair. We are going to sort out the eye contact anyway. But so from this kind of camera angle, we're seeing that she's looking at Lucy. So now we need to bring Lucy into the scene. Just do that. And then we're going to find another pose for her. Now she's not going to be the main subject. We're going to see the back of her head and her shoulder. So it's not as vitally important that she's in the perfect pose. So we're just going to go back and we're going to find our pose, our sitting pose. As long as she's sitting down and it doesn't look completely weird, we can really put her in whatever position we want. So let's just literally going to go through, just going to find something. This one will do. Give it a moment to flick through there. It's just going to have a bit of a hissy fit because DAT Studio, every version of DAT Studio that comes out is worse and worse optimized. It takes longer and longer to load things. It's quite annoying. Okay, so now we're going to rotate Lucy a bit so that she looks like she's actually engaged in the conversation. We're going to slide her around, and then as we did with Laura, we're actually going to bring her up, but we can't go as far with her because, as you can see, her knee is going to start clipping into the table. So the simple solution to that is just move her further away from the table, to be honest, and then we can just bring her up like that, and then move the chair that she's supposedly sitting on back a little bit as well. We might even have to compromise and just drop that chair down slightly, and then we can see what we're starting to build a picture of what our scene's going to look like. Now what I'm going to do here is, there are scripts that'll do this, but I'm not promoting anybody else's stuff, so I'm just going to create a new nulls here, and I'm actually going to move that null. I'm going to go for the straight up top view. As you can see, it's freaking miles away from where I need it to be. I'm going to move that over so that it's central to Lucy's head. Just move it so I'm dead over Lucy's head. Calm down, boys. And there we are. And then if I go into the front view or the rear view, we can now bring that up so that it's where it needs to be. And more or less dead on center. You could, if you really wanted to be fussy, move this to the front of Lucy's face so it's actually on in between her eyes, more or less like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click on Laura's face, select her eyeballs, and we're going to, where it says right eye, we're going to go to point at, null. And we're going to do the same thing with her left eye, point at, null, like that. And then when DAT Studio sorts its life out and stops having a spaz attack, we can actually rotate her head slightly as well, twist it over so that it looks a little less like she's straining her neck. Now we can give her an expression. Close down that. Always try and close down your tabs while you're going. That looks like she's having a good time rather than vacant stare, which we currently have. So we're just going to go to poses again and expressions. And we're going to find a happy-ish expression. You don't want it to look like she's having an orgasm, which is a thing that I see an awful lot in these DAS renders. There's a difference between looking happy and looking like you're having it off. Right, so what we can do is if we go down here, we can actually switch into NVIDIA iRay mode now, and we can just see how she looks. Yeah, you could turn Lucy off just to speed up the flow, but it's not going to be that prohibitively expensive at the moment. So we can actually see here that she doesn't look that happy at the moment. Let's try and ramp up the happiness of the expression to the next level. So we're just going to skim through the catalogue of expressions that we've got. Let's try this one. She might look a bit retarded, she might not. That looks a bit happier from the... Nope, still doesn't look that happy. Okay. Let's keep on going. It doesn't look that bad, all things considered. It looks okay. Right, so anyway, we're going to come out of our texture shaded mode and finish building our scene. Her eyes are okay. She does look like she's having a conversation now. It's just with the lighting the way it is, I think it was hiding the joy in her face. Right. Either way. Right. So we've got stuff there. We can see there is still a bit of niff-naff and trivia. What we could do is add another character in the background or something like that. But they become very, very heavy on amount of resources that they use, considering they're only a minor person in the background. That's where billboarding comes in. You can create your own billboards just by rendering a PNG of a character standing still and then mount that PNG onto a plane. So we could keep adding items to the background, but what I want to do is I'm actually going to set up the camera now to be where I want it to be. So I'm just going to set up, I'm going to zoom right back, all the way back, and I'm just going to create a camera round about here, apply viewport transforms, etc. Go into the camera. In our camera settings, we're going to focal length it, and then we can rotate up so that we are actually aiming at what we want to be aiming at. Like that. Maybe even come in a little bit tighter. There we go, that's better. Right, so I've moved all of the objects into a group purely just to make this next step easier. We can just hit Control, hit the arrow, and now only the characters will actually light up yellow. Realistically, I've got them where I want them, so I can also turn off the selection ability of them, and now nothing's going to keep flashing yellow when I'm in the scene. So I'm in the camera, so I come back out of that, and I'm going to select our camera in the scene, turn on depth of field, and then the focal distance is going to be quite long. You would eventually see that come in. As you can see, because we're zoomed out a long way, even at f22, our focal range, our focal distance is going to be very, very small, so we need to crank that up a bit. We want Lucy to be bokeh'd out of the image, or bokeh, or whatever you want to call it. But for me, I want most of Laura to be relatively in focus, so I can just tweak that, change that, and then when we come back to our camera, we can see that there's a bit of poke through on that bench. So if we come into there, we can select our bench, which is somewhere, sofa, that's what we want, and then we can just tweak that backwards and forwards until, there we go, that's now gone. So now when we render our scene, let's see what happens. So here we are with the render in Photoshop, and there's a few observations that I can already make, which I would probably change if I were to go back and redo the render, such as it's quite dark. But I can fix those things in post for now, and then obviously adjust my scene. I would highly recommend, if you spot this and you're doing a continuation of images, fix it in the render, not in post. And then the reason for that is you want all your images to be lit similarly. You don't want one to be really bright and then the rest to be slightly different brightnesses, because that's pretty jarring. So if I were doing this as a series of images for one of my games, I would actually go back and fix it in the render by adjusting the brightness of the HDRI, moving it or whatever. But for the purposes of this exercise, it's completely fine. It's cool. You can see that there is a bit of a weirdness going on there. Realistically, what I should do, and this is probably, yeah, I'm just going to go with this. We've got a lot of spare pixels to play with, so I'm just going to crop this off slightly. In fact, I'm going to leave it for now, and I'm going to crop it off slightly in post. If we get rid of that, you can see. So I'm going to go Control J, and on this layer, I'm going to go with the same trick I did before, but this time I'm going to do it properly. Remember, got the selection tool selected, Control A to make sure I've got the whole layer selected. Then I'm going to use the move tool and I'm just going to tap the right arrow once. Then I'm going to deselect that layer, turn on back all of those layers, and as you can see now it's given us a little bit of a chromatic aberration to the shot, and then I can just turn that down in intensity just by adjusting the opacity of that layer. I want it to be there, but I don't want it to be so bad that it looks like I need a new lens in my camera or whatever. I think that works pretty well like that. It's a sunny day, so we're going to have to fix the obvious issue with the image being too dark. So there's options we can do. Before I try anything else, I would at least try and fix it with the exposure adjustment layer, and we'll just go up by maybe 1 stop and see if that works. See, that amazingly works. 1 stop makes it look brighter, and then what we can actually do over the top of that is add a photo filter, and we can make it look warmer. So now it actually looks like it's a warm sunny day rather than not a warm sunny day. I think Laura's eyes look a little bit dull, so I'm actually going to create a new layer in here. No, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do an even better trick. I'm going to create a curves layer, and I'm going to drag the brightness of that up, and then I'm going to Control-I to invert the layer mask. I'm going to select my brush tool. I'm going to set my opacity to somewhere in the region of about 20%. Flow, we're going to set that to about 50%, and then I'm going to zoom right into our eyes. And now you can see the chromatic aberration, which is the trick. That's the trick. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually in the brighter area. I'm actually going to go over a few times just across the sort of the top 50% of the eyeball that's actually lit. Notice there's a shadow along the top there where the eyelid and the eyebrows and the hairs were. We don't want to brighten that area up because it'll look like she's got glowing. It helps if you have the right colour brush. We're just brightening up the top 50% of the lit area of her eye, like so. And then we can do the same thing with this one, although not to the same extent because obviously there's hair and stuff over it. We're just adding a little bit more brightness to the eyes, and if we Control 0, you can see that it just gives her eyes a little bit more life, a little bit more je ne sais quoi. That's the word I'm going to use. Okay, so other things we can do, we could add debris, we could add falling debris into the picture. It is a beach, we could add some kind of, you know, any kind of effect that we wanted here really. I'm actually overall not unhappy with the way this image looks. I think the bokeh is just about right. Maybe it could be a little bit shallower, but it's fine. So really the last thing I want to do to this image is just to crop out those edges a little bit, so with the rough bit, and then obviously we're removing that image there, so we got image crop, and now we've got rid of that weird looking elbow situation down there, and we've got a reasonable looking render. Thanks very much for watching that, guys. I hope you found that useful. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one, but until then, you take damn good care of yourselves, guys. All right, bye bye.